Hey, welcome back to A Faster Me. Proud to announce that Jack Rue has come on as a sponsor for all of our kit and cycling attire. So anyway, this is the Santa Barbara Road Race, and this is the women's category 4-5.
And this was kind of a last minute decision to drive up and race. I have two teammates in the race. Audrey, this is the first race she ever did, and then Jessie, and this is her first road race ever. So kind of looked at the course on video, the drive up to Santa Maria. So even though it's the Santa Barbara road race, it's in Santa Maria, which is probably about an hour and a half from Santa Barbara, a little further north. So it's kind of a last minute decision, and we just decided to drive after work on Friday and stay up there. And surprisingly, compared to years past, we had about 20 women pre-registered, and then a few people, I think Deb and Sandy showed up day of, and maybe a few other riders. So have a number of girls from Endure Racing. There's Go Fast, a few other teams. It's also a collegiate race, so have some collegiate racers out here as well. And
Yeah, and the race hasn't even started yet, actually. This is just a lead-in to the course. So they come down the hill here, and then when they make the right turn here, this is where the race actually starts.
And I wanted to be up front when the race started, and definitely determined to stay towards the front and race with a little bit more purpose than I did last week. So here there's a rider from Alto Velo, I believe, and she was kind of out in front already. So I just kind of jumped to get on her wheel. And this is I think her first road race or first race. I wasn't exactly sure what. So I was very happy to just sit second wheel, and could have been a little bit further back to be a little bit more protected, but not doing too many watts here. So was pretty comfortable just sitting in second wheel. Wanted to maybe just kind of sit in and let others make moves the first lap and then kind of see where to go. So the course is beautiful. Has one climb and some rollers, and the start and finish are the same place, just different directions. So we kind of ride out, do a full lap, and our race was about 29 miles, so it was 2 laps, and then at the very end you kind of turn back up, and that was actually the most brutal part in my opinion, that hill. So even if I had been probably with some people, I probably wouldn't have been at that ending, because it just is such a steep hill. So here we go.
Yeah, you can see too, like at the top of the screen, it's only 45 degrees. It was very, very cold, very brisk out there. It wasn't that bad though. What you can see the sun's trying to poke out through the clouds, so it wasn't maybe as cold as it didn't really feel as cold as it looked, but it definitely was a cold day. Beautiful course. The roads aren't too bad as well.
We were lucky to not have a lot of wind, and we didn't have any rain. So unfortunately, race is a little bit later. I think a little wind showed up, some rain, definitely not as pleasant conditions. And we were headed back to Southern California by that time.
Yeah, you can see the rider on front. She doesn't really want to keep pulling. She's trying to pull off, get some people to pass her.
I told her she's doing a great job setting the pace. She said, "I'm not trying to set the pace." She said she didn't know where she was going. I said, I don't know where I'm going either. So here we sit, first and second wheel.
Yeah, definitely a good turnout. Also, long, a pretty good group for this size, especially out in the middle of nowhere. I know some of the collegiate riders are from the area and from Northern California, but it was good to see that it was definitely a good turnout for the 4-5 group.
I think we had double the amount of the pro women later, who had about 10 pre-registered. So I think that's definitely surprising to have such a big turnout for road races in particular. The history has shown not as many people show up, so I think this was really nice to see, especially kind of out in the middle of nowhere like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too when you talk about cycling in America and in Southern California. You know, most of the cycling we see on TV are based on road races. All the riders you talk to, they say they don't like crits. They're afraid of crits. It's too many crashes, and they wish there were more road races. And then every time there's a road race, no one shows up for it. So I think people are just so afraid of getting dropped on climbs. But honestly, if we get the same turnouts at road races like we do at crits, it doesn't matter. You'll find a group that you're competing in, and it's still just a good, nice, long ride with a good workout. And I think when you finish road races, sometimes there's a higher sense of accomplishment.
I would agree. There's a lot of suffering that goes into road races, especially if you get detached and are riding by yourself, which at least at some point I have been almost every road race I've done, with the exception of maybe a couple. And there's just always some really hard effort. So if you're in a group suffering with a few other riders or by yourself, and if you look at the camera, it looks really beautiful. When you're out there riding, it seems a little bit more barren, but looking at the sky and everything looks really nice on the camera view.
Yeah, and it was. I rode the course the opposite direction, trying to, shout some instructions to the girls at different points of the race. But yeah, I think more people should obviously do road races. It's kind of like what we do every weekend, riding big group rides and stuff like that. Even in the group rides, depending on how fast the group rides are, at some point everybody's dropped on the group ride as well. It separates people. Anytime the road goes up, there's going to be some separation. So yeah, it's just kind of that fear factor of getting over it and convincing others to sign up too, so there'll be larger groups. Also, this is a long video. Definitely good to watch on a trainer or, some of your zone 1-2 rides if you're stuck inside on Zwift. So there's going to be moments of silence off and on. As much as we like to talk, it's kind of hard to talk for an hour straight, hour and a half straight. We're just putting the whole video out, the entire video out, because one, when we were searching for this road race, there's not too many videos out that show the entire course and shows all the grades and everything else. And then two, it's a good race. It's pretty competitive. The group stays together for a very long time. So it's definitely, something we like to do and just put the entire race out and show the entire experience.
I hope it can be motivating for some of those trainer rides when you're stuck inside of just the suffering, especially when you're by yourself. I think it's real easy for a lot of people to get discouraged after they've been dropped, or sometimes it's not so fun to be doing a workout that you have to do when it's raining outside. And I think we don't need motivation all the time. We just need to accomplish our goals and do the training. So hopefully it can be some motivation for those of you suffering on the trainer one day.
Yeah, this I don't know who this is, but she's been pulling for a very long time. I mean, we're 8 minutes in. So yeah, pulling for 8 minutes at the beginning of the race that's a long pull.
And there you just saw my watts spike up. So she did a pretty hard acceleration, I think, maybe tired of people not coming through and just kind of testing it out. And it's just something I think that comes with experience, because if you really don't want to pull, you can just stop. So it's something I noticed at I think the San Luis road race, just the experience level. I remember PC kind of doing a pull, and when she was done, she just stopped. And there's no option that people have except to go around. And I think some of us with a little bit less experience, we don't want to lose too many positions, so we kind of stay up and maybe a little bit indecisive. So here I just kind of go to the front. I'm not wanting to be on the front, but here I am. So I'm going to kind of shut it down and stop doing the effort in a second.
Yeah, and that's what I'd say as well. Like, yeah, you don't have to pull. And just because you're at the front, if everybody wants to go 10, 12, 14 miles per hour, then so be it. But as you see, Ellen shut down to 11 miles per hour, and then, of course, other riders came around her. For the most part, nobody came out to do 11 miles per hour. So when you're that slow, other people will start to participate.
And so I decided I didn't want to be up second wheel, so I'm trying to get back in. Here at fourth wheel is a better place to be. I can maybe see what's happening in front of me, but I'm still at the front of the race.
Yeah, and just know as you move up to the higher categories, anytime it gets slow like this, people are going to attack. In the lower categories, not so many people do it because they want that slow ride because they don't trust their fitness as much. But as you move up to higher categories and it gets slow, people are going to really attack and punish the peloton.
And there you see, somebody just decided to attack. So I jump on it, Audrey jumps on it, and it is so much easier to jump on an attack versus I think something I'm real good at is letting the attack go and then responding a few seconds later, and that is much more challenging. So if you can kind of see the attack happening and jump on it, it does not feel that difficult.
Yeah, it's definitely better to cover an attack than try to chase it down.
Some parts of me wishes I had a backward-facing camera to be able to see the group, because when you're in the front of the group, in my mind, everybody's still there. So I think that the peloton is completely intact, and as I learned later, there was people kind of dropped the first time the road went up. So your perception at the front is very different, and you don't want to be looking back to see what's going on behind you, but sometimes it would be interesting to see. And in this race, it would have been, nice to see what happened with the crash that is going to happen.
Yeah, is this the first climb, or is this not considered a climb yet? I don't know if this is the first real climb, or is this one of the rollers?
I'm not exactly sure because it didn't feel like there was any significant difference in the climb to me when I was out there racing. So you see the road is going up, we're doing 9 miles an hour. And again, I didn't feel that there was a real big significant climb.
Yeah, now that I see the speed, it's and only 2%. Yeah, that's why you didn't feel like it was a climb. Nobody's going hard. So when you're going this slow, doing 130 watts, you can't tell if there's a climb or not.
And here goes another attack. So here I'm, 500 watts, and again able to stay with it, which it's amazing how much easier the race feels when you can just stay on a wheel versus what I think I regularly do is chasing things down. The girl in front of me in the yellow, I met her this weekend. It's her first race. Her name is Sid, and I think she did a good job getting out here and competing in her first race. Don't know much of her background, but I wouldn't be surprised if she has a triathlete background. So Sid, if you're watching, let us know if that's accurate.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of strong girls in this race. Sometimes people are just young or they come from other disciplines, but you can tell that people are really strong. Fitness is not really the issue here.
And to my right there in the black kit is Molly, and I think a lot of people had scouted her out, a really strong athlete. Someone said she'd maybe done a number of centuries the previous week, so a lot of people were fighting for her wheel, so I think people had scouted her out. And here I'm a little undecided if I want to stay behind Sid over here all the way on the left or try to get back in because she's riding off, kind of not with the peloton. So I'm a little bit in no man's land just in between, as I was a little bit indecisive of where I wanted to be and how much I wanted to battle for wheels. It's always tough early on to stay in good position, but also not fight too hard for a wheel. Third wheel, is just as good as second wheel. Maybe fourth wheel's as good as third in most cases. So, you don't want to be too passive, but you also don't want to be too assertive and battle unnecessarily. So those are some of the things that I was playing with in my mind as I'm riding or racing here.
Yeah, I wish you were drafting a little bit better, but there's a big gap in between. And yes, you're getting some draft benefit with girls on both sides of you, but yeah, you definitely should be tucked in closer to one side or the other.
Overall, I was much happier with my performance this race. I raced with a lot more intention, tried to stay tucked in. Here is Jessie to my left, making an appearance.
This is only Jesse's second race as well. Jesse's really strong, and yeah, this is just her second race. So I look forward to seeing Jessie, how she grows over this season. She's already, competitive, and I think, as the season goes on, she's definitely going to get a lot stronger and a lot better at just racing in general.
And her learning curve is much quicker than I know for sure my learning curve was, and a lot of riders who start out. So she is in there competing. I think she definitely has the bug, and I agree. It's going to be exciting to see her grow. And here, this is a really good position to be as far as coverage and protection, tucked in pretty nice. A little bit of movement from the riders, but nothing too significant.
Yeah, I think sometimes the movement is sometimes people think they have to be directly behind the rider the entire time, but you don't have to react so much to every single movement of the rider in front of you. You're still going to get draft. There's a big hole punched in the air, so yeah, you don't have to just react every second to every move that the rider makes in front of you. You could do it gradually. Also, one of the reasons we're out here is because of Jessie. Jessie loves road races, or would like to do road races. She loves climbing. So anytime we have an opportunity for Jessie, Audrey, anyone that likes the road races, if we have an opportunity, we're going to try to get to some of those as well. We do, 30 plus crits through the year. So there's only a couple road races, so we try to get to a couple of them.
And that's one thing that also is a battle for sure in my mind, of wanting to do less races and be more, specifically target a few races and race less. But then also, if there's teammates racing, a lot of what we're trying to build is based on team. So wanting to get out there and actually utilize some team tactics and try some different things and work together as a team is what I think makes racing really enjoyable, and not just going out to get a workout.
Yeah, you see Audrey moved up the right side right there. Starting to get pretty congested. It's pretty steep right now too. You see it's at 8.6%. So this is 7.6%. So this is probably the biggest climb.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the climb. When you look at the profile on, I don't know, Training Peaks or Strava, I think this is about in the race when the hill is. But again, when I was out there, I was surprised at how little climbing it felt like, if that makes sense. I don't think I'm speaking very clearly right now, but nothing new there.
Yeah, but you're doing a lot of watts. I mean, you're still doing a lot of watts. You're doing 300 and something. So, yeah, it's a good effort. It's definitely a solid effort.
And although I'm protected here, which is pretty good for draft protection, I'm back a little bit further than I want to be. So this is the, back half of the field, and I definitely would rather be in the front half of the field. That is Holly to my right, UCSD rider in the Collegiate kit. We end up riding together a little bit later, and we both have Elisa as a teammate. So
yeah, number 986 in the blue and gold, the UCSD kit. Yeah, so this is definitely probably the longest climb here. It's starting to level out a little bit or get a little bit more shallow, but it's still going up.
we're doing a pretty good effort. So my watts being at 250, 300 in the draft, that means the women in the front are probably putting a pretty good effort up there.
Yeah, and the draft effect. I mean, there's still a draft effect at 12 miles per hour, but it's a little bit weaker than if you're going faster. So that's one of the things about climbing is everyone has to do a decent portion of their own effort.
It's a little interesting that we're doing this effort and all spread across the road.
Yeah, there's a lot of strong girls. It's not too stretched out. So yeah, everybody's trying to stay with the group, and they fear that when the climb comes, that's when it gets separation. So they fear that someone may get away. So everybody's putting in a decent effort.
I really think that the women's racing has grown a lot, or I think the quality in the lower levels has really jumped up in the last couple of years. So here's some separation. Jessie goes around, and I definitely want to close that gap and be on the front side if there is any splitting or breaking. So I'm going to do the work to close this gap. And I was able to recognize fairly quickly when there was a little bit of a separation. And if you don't recognize that quickly, it's very easy to be just in a bad situation and have a good gap. And, that might be the race.
Yeah, when it splits, it's definitely easy to just be caught out and be in the second group. But yeah, you did a good job of moving around that rider and then closing the gap to Jessie here.
I do think this is an area where I was a little bit, I don't know if impatient is the right word, because we're starting to go downhill, and I found myself hitting my brakes a few times, and then I decided to go around. But I think I could have just been a little bit more patient, because once the wind is in your face, the effort definitely changes.
Yeah, and it's kind of a little false flat here. I mean, it's 3%. That's pretty steep, actually. I don't mean steep, but it's steeper than it looks. So yeah, 3%. You guys are only going 14 miles per hour, so yeah, it's definitely not downhill yet.
And I definitely jumped ahead to a part that hasn't happened, so probably could have waited to talk about that when we get there, but I didn't, so you get a spoiler alert.
Yeah, I tell you this though, the camera doesn't do the road justice really. When you're there, it looks, well, at least for me, I wasn't racing, I was just riding, but it looks more beautiful than the camera shows. Definitely like beautiful countryside, and the roads were not in, they're in decent condition. A little bit bumpy on this backstride once they turn right, but other than that, the roads were in pretty good condition, as you can tell, and they're very fast and smooth. So you're definitely going downhill now.
So there you can see I was running up Jessie's bumper, and don't know if you want to kind of freewheel and go around or hit your brakes a little and stay in the draft, but
yeah, downhill, I definitely, well, you're going back over a little riser right here. But yeah, I definitely would let the wind slow me down. For the most part, anytime you hit your brakes, you're scrubbing off some free speed that you built up, and you're going to have to use power to get that speed back. So I definitely let the wind just drift off to the side just a little bit, let the wind slow you down. If you want to slow down.
definitely don't want to hit somebody, so slowing down is a good alternative to hitting someone's back wheel.
No, I think on that situation, I think Jessie had actually tapped her brakes for a second. So, yeah, but definitely coasting wise, yeah, you want to just go around if you can. It's free speed. It's not like you're pedaling, so it doesn't matter when you're downhill. It doesn't matter if you're in the front or the back. As far as the free speed is concerned, not positioning. Yeah, looking at the map to the left, it doesn't look like anything special. Like the layout looks kind of boring on the map, but when you ride it, it's actually a pretty fun course.
I am just sitting in and, trying to be patient and just draft and stay with the group right now. And it did not feel that difficult. So my heart rate is 158, which is fairly high for me, gets a little bit higher. But these kind of rollers were fun. So the little hills didn't seem like too much work, especially when you have some pretty good downhill.
Yeah, and this is, I think, where most of the downhill starts here. So it should be a pretty long downhill section coming up.
And I think I could have tucked a little bit better and not been pedaling. So here I was tucked and for a second doing no watts, but then you see me pedaling. So I think that's an area that I could do a little bit better in. I'm probably sitting upright just a little bit too much.
Yeah, and you can tell, like, by your shadow, you're on the hoods. And I think this is I mean, the hoods are fine. You can be in the hoods or the drops. I like to be in the drops when it's this fast, when it's 36 miles per hour. But I think this is a spot where you could have played to your strength. You're usually really good descending. You're a little bit larger than some of the other girls. I would have definitely liked to see you kind of go to the front here and just use your speed on the descents.
And that's exactly what I tried to do, but I used way too many watts, so I should have used a little bit less effort, a little bit more aerodynamic position. The Go Fast rider, very strong rider. This is my first time racing with her, I believe.
Yeah, she's been out on Montrose, I think, the last few weeks with Pat. So yeah, definitely good to see her out here racing.
Her name is Bailey.
Yeah, but I think you just moved to the front a little late. When it was steep and you were freewheeling, and instead of hitting your brakes, I think you should have just went to the front there and used your descending to your advantage.
And here I jump back in, I think fourth wheel. And again, I wish I could know how big a group is with us. So in my mind, I think the whole peloton is here, but
Yeah, and for the most part, the group was still together. Maybe that wasn't me on the other side, but I'm going to be on the other side of the road in a second, if I'm not mistaken. And you guys were all still together at the time that I passed you. Not everyone, but let's say there's 23 or 24 riders in the group. I want to say a good 17 riders are still together.
And here, I think that's the Stanford rider. She came up on the right side and was battling me a little bit for that wheel. And actually, you saw her signal to get in, and I decided to go ahead and let her get in. It's early in the race. There's a lot of racing left. Just as easy to get behind her versus the rider in front of her.
Yeah, I know you mentioned it earlier, but that's one of the things people have to learn is like when to fight for wheels, when not to. Not every wheel is worth fighting for.
And there goes Audrey on a attack. So she shoots up the left side. She came from a really good position back maybe about eighth wheel. And so a lot of the riders on the front can't see her coming. So I'm just going to try to maintain my position, get in good position, and see what happens if, we can establish a break, or if she can get away with a few riders. I'll kind of determine if I want to shut things down or if I want to, get in that break. So here there's a little separation. I think this rider's going to maybe go around. And then I decide to counter once we catch her. So that was definitely not something that I had planned to do, but I just thought, let's see what happens. And, if we were able to kind of split the field with her attack and then my attack, that's how a break can possibly get established. So when I see the these riders have kind of caught up to her and she's just pulling. Definitely don't want her just pulling the rest of the group along.
Yeah, definitely a strong attack by Audrey and got everything moving. This may have been what caused some of the separation of the group. But here's your attack here.
I'm going to hit my highest power numbers right now, which it's funny how adrenaline works because I did not feel that it was that hard of an effort, but with the adrenaline.
Also with the downhill, so there's less tension in the pedals.
So, and in my mind, I shut it down almost immediately, but here is maybe just a little bit longer than it happened in my memory because I looked back at a certain point and I saw there was at least a handful of riders with me. It appeared to be the peloton, so I'm just going to shut it down. And then my plan is to get back in and recover.
So that was me on the other side of the road right there, just yelling instructions. So yeah, I think there's still about 17 riders in this group right now, and then maybe about another 5 to 7 riders off the back.
And I did not see you in the race, so I saw you later, but I didn't see you or hear you at this point in the race.
Well, you guys are going like almost 30 miles per hour, so it's kind of hard to see and hear with somebody on the other side that you're not looking for.
So I was happy with how I was able to recover, get back in kind of mid-pack instead of letting the whole group pass me after an attack, and I was able to recover fairly quickly. Although the effort probably hurt me later in the race, but you just can't know, and you got to try some different things. And
yeah, no, I think it was a good attempt. Audrey had just attacked. They put some effort in to run her down. So yeah, it's good to test the legs and just test the group, see if they can, who can recover and who can't. And it's good to launch a counterattack once they catch your teammate. You see you guys just flew by one of the guys from the other fields there. I think he was having some bike trouble because I saw him on the side of the road off and on throughout the day.
I don't ever recall catching as many riders from different categories as we did in this race, because usually, a open category starts ahead of us. Typically, we're not catching them. And Sid is doing a pretty hard effort here. And Molly is the girl in black. I believe that's her name. She's riding off to the side doing a little of her own work, and I'm staggered. So both of us, cross-wheeling, not the best situation, but it's okay.
This is fine here. Yeah, you can tell they were putting in a pretty hard effort. I mean, you're in the mid 200s, so they're probably doing a little bit more than that.
And Sid shuts it down, definitely wants whoever's behind her to pull through, but we're not going to.
Yeah, I think Molly's trying to get back in, but it doesn't appear that she exactly knows how to. Trying to overtake you to get back in here.
And I was more than okay being third wheel.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay to just communicate. Just back off, let the spot open, and you can tell her, go ahead and get in. And then both you guys are in the draft instead of kind of getting partial drafts. I think this is where Sid may shut it down here a little bit. You can see she sat up, kind of soft pedaling now. But yeah, I think this is the only part of the road that has like the rough surface. Everything else should be fairly smooth.
We are going to have an incident here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, you got one more turn here. And then there should be, I say short, it's not really that short, it's pretty long. And I think here, if I remember correctly, Ellen can confirm or deny, but I think this is where there was a little bit of crosswind on this side over here.
Yeah, it felt pretty windy, and the three of us here actually have a little separation. I was debating if I should say something. The separation wasn't that great, but the three of us have just a little bit of separation from the other girls. I don't know if we just took the corner a little bit faster or just this hard effort. But I didn't say anything. I just sat third wheel and let whatever happened behind me happen.
Yeah, I think this would be a good spot, even though it's flat for a breakaway, just because the crosswinds. I saw the male category or the open category. I saw this is where they got some separation on a little attack and a small group got away. Even though it's flat, whenever there's a crosswind, the effort just goes up a lot and it's kind of hard to catch people.
I was trying to figure out which way the wind was coming from because sometimes it's hard to tell when you're riding because you're putting in the effort, you feel the wind coming at you, and it's hard to know if it's coming from the right or the left. I think some people may be a little bit better at that, but that's something that I sometimes have a hard time doing if it's a full-on headwind or coming from one side or the other.
Yeah, like Ellen said, I'll break it down a little bit more when it comes to it. But yeah, Molly is super strong, but I think she does have a little bit of a tendency to cross wheel. Yeah, and not earlier, but in a little while, like probably in another couple minutes, she's gonna do two things. One thing she's gonna do that's like one of them's gonna be the wrong thing to do. And then right after that, she's going to do a really good job and kind of correct the mistake that she made. Unfortunately, it starts a little domino effect, but yeah. So it's kind of a teaching point, and then at the same time, it's a great job for her save that she does here. So I'm just going to start talking about it now because I'm not going to rewind or slow-mo or any of that stuff. So basically, she's going to be cross-wheeling off and on. She's trying to draft closely, but I always tell people, especially when they start off racing, you do not have to be 6 inches off the wheel. A lot of people like to quote that 6-inch thing. You do not have to be 6 inches, especially when you're new. I say stay one tire length off the wheel, which is about 18 inches, one wheel length. But anyway, Molly's trying to get a close draft here off of Sid, and unfortunately, she's going to cross-wheel her and hit her back tire. But the incredible part is she does do the right thing after the cross wheeling. Obviously, we don't want to cross wheel, but at least not when people are single file. If you're in a pack, it's okay to cross wheel because the riders don't have anywhere to go. They can't move left or right. So even though Sid doesn't move at the time of the cross wheel happens, Molly does a great job of going into the wheel, which is what you're supposed to do to get your balance back. Or you can deflect off of the wheel. But what you can't do is try to avoid. See, here it is there. So the cross wheel obviously is a mistake by Molly, but it's also a great job of going into the wheel. That's why she flew across the road to the left, because she went into the tire, and that's what helped her keep her balance. I think she may have actually touched the barrier on the other side there, but the unfortunate part is when that happened, the reaction from the girls behind caused another crash, another girl to hit somebody else's wheel. They crashed, and then one of our teammates went over the rider, I think from Stanford, who had fallen and kind of flipped over and hurt her collarbone a little bit. The good thing is she's had x-rays, there is no break, and Molly was able to get back in also, and it's just a riding incident. Was nothing malicious there, and like I said, we don't want to cross wheel. But at the same time, we got to give her kudos for doing the right thing, not panicking. Well, she probably did panic, but she went into the wheel to save her balance and did not crash. Unfortunately, some others behind crashed. And here, Ellen didn't know that there was a crash, and then she organized the break.
So I was sure that Molly was going down. So the way that she went into the tire, you heard all the stuff. I was shocked that she was able to save it. So great job getting in the dirt. In my mind, there was more than a fence. It was almost like a banner or barrier on the, so there might have been something on the fence, but so then she came back over. So I thought, hey, we're good. It had just come after Sid had done a pretty hard acceleration. So I see that we have a break, and I just think that we have a break. So I say, hey, let's go. Line up, because at first everyone was like, yeah, let's go, and they were kind of spread across the road. So just tried to organize the break. There was at first maybe 3 or 4 of us. I asked, I can't remember who I asked, but she said there's 7 of us. So I'm like, hey, 7 is a pretty good opportunity for a break that can stick, especially with, some riders who've been at the front, putting in some acceleration, still riding hard. So I had no idea that there was a crash behind us, because I just thought the only incident was the hitting the wheel and the save.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Jessie, who is really strong climber, we thought she had a really good chance to fight for the win for this race. Unfortunately, being her first race, she didn't know what to do when she saw other people crash, so she stopped at the crash. And so it took her, a minute or whatever to get back on her bike and go. Even though she didn't crash, she stopped to see if people were okay.
And Audrey crashed.
And Audrey, our teammate, crashed. So she was trying to think, oh, do I stop? Do I wait with Audrey? So then she got back on her bike and had to chase this group. She ended up running it down, part of the group down, but by that time there was a separation, and the girls had already, the stronger girls had already gotten off the front, and she wasn't fortunate enough to be in that break. It's just, I think we were just really hoping that she was able to make the front group, because we really think she's had a chance to, compete for the first couple spots, or at least a podium.
And I was saying, hey, maybe 20 or 30 second pulls. I really thought that a dynamic pace line might be better, but, I don't know how much everyone else knows as far as pace lining. So I was just trying to get something consistent going without having one rider off the front for the whole time. So I'm going to do my pull probably for 30 seconds. It is a pretty hard effort, good VO2 effort for me, above threshold. And unfortunately, kind of knowing how many riders were in the break was a disservice to me, because I wanted it to be the full 7 of us rotating, and I didn't react quick enough. So as we turn this corner, I'm gonna pull off, and unfortunately there's a little gap, so I should have jumped on it.
So this is it right here, and this is part of it. Like, no matter how many riders are in the group, you don't want big gaps to open. So Ellen's mistake is here. She's waiting for the other riders to try to come through, and then when the gaps open, she has to accelerate again here. And yeah, those are fast girls up there. They're not going to wait for you. So now she's going to end up using a lot of energy, even after just pulling. So now she's going to use more energy trying to close. And really, when that gap opens, especially when it comes to a corner, you just got to turn.
And there, April comes by and tells me my teammates went down. I heard a teammate went down, and she said she told me she thought both teammates went down. So here it was just like I kind of got caught out, and I'd already done that hard effort. So that's going to be the split of 4 people in the front. So disappointing to not react a little bit quicker and jump back in, because if there's 3 people and you just jump right on that wheel, you're able to recover. But trying to do a second effort is difficult.
Well, also, when you're doing a pace line and you come to a turn, it just is what it is. You navigate the turn first and then resume the pace line. Once you pulled off, like thinking people are going to come through, they don't really, they can't really come through as smooth when you're navigating the turn. So just go ahead and navigate the turn first and then resume the pace line.
So here there is, Sid and I are together. So we're going to start working together, and then we're going to pick up Holly shortly. So there's a group of 4 in the front, and then there's going to be this chase group of 3. And with us getting organized pretty quickly, I thought we had a realistic chance of bringing the break back, especially if they weren't organized. But if they were, of course, that becomes very difficult. But at a point, it appeared that we were closing the gap on them. There was a few times I saw them maybe riding together. So
yeah, it looks like you're closing it now even a little bit.
Yes. So I was fairly optimistic, maybe a little bit of delusion in there, but thinking, hey, we can close the gap, especially knowing that the separation happened on a corner, which everyone turns a little bit different.
Oh, is that Holly?
That's
there?
Holly right there.
Okay. So, yeah, I thought you were closing the gap, but it looks like Holly might be coming backwards a little bit.
She was, but Sid did a great job motivating her. Hey, let's go, get on it. And I think great job especially for it being Sid's first race, for her to be able to pace line the way that she was. I think she did a great job.
Yeah, and there's the start finish line to the right there, going up that hill. So that's one full lap right now.
So I'm going to yell at Joshua that somebody, one of us crashed. So I kind of point behind me. And at that point, I don't know who it was that crashed, but definitely want to get some of our people to our other people and make sure that they're okay.
Yeah, and I'm still circulating the course the opposite direction. I was waiting for them at a different spot. So I don't even know that there's a crash yet. I'm just kind of waiting for the group to come by. And when I see there's a small group of 4 girls that goes by. And then I see, 2 of my team chasing a couple minutes, or not, I shouldn't say a couple minutes. It was actually probably 1 minute behind at the time, or maybe even a little less.
Yeah, probably about 30 seconds, because at one point I was counting the gap, maybe even less, but you can't see them in the camera, at least not that I can see on this screen. But
it's small, but they're cresting the hill right now.
But in real life, it appears that they're a lot closer. And so we were fairly motivated and believed that we could catch them.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Jessie is chasing right now the entire time to try to get back up because she stopped at the crash site, and that she does catch though. She does catch the group, but that's just a big effort, and she's super small. So just pushing all that on the flats, pushing your own watts on the flat while you're chasing groups of 4 and 3 that are pace lining, that's just a lot of work to do, and a huge expectation.
She said it was her hardest effort of the race, and I don't even know how she caught, because the 3 of us are putting in some work. You see here I'm doing a few hundred watts in the draft, went down a little bit now, but we're working pretty hard. So I was very surprised to see Jessie join us.
Yeah, no, Jessie's super strong. She has a running background, so she has a huge aerobic engine. She's just new to road racing this year. She's done a bunch of fondos on the East Coast before she moved out here and joined us this at the beginning of the off season. So she's been working with us for the last couple months, and she's definitely gotten even much stronger. We kind of joke with her first ride with us, like she was basically getting dropped on a Zone 2 ride to the beach and back, and now she's like really good, really strong climber. So yeah, you guys are definitely putting in a pretty good effort.
Sid has a real nice cadence. She had some really nice strong pulls.
Yeah, she has a pretty good riding position too, especially, like you said, if she's new. She wasn't too high up. She has her elbows bent. Her back is somewhat flat. So you see a lot of new riders will ride straight up and down, just catching all the wind. But she has a pretty good position.
Honestly, even after some years of racing, my position is still not the best. I ride much too straight up and down as well. I do work on it every now and then, but then I find myself just going back to what's comfortable, which is not a narrow position.
No, yeah, that's just part of it. Everybody goes to what's comfortable. Our bodies are not built to ride bikes and be in that bent over position. So you definitely got to get your core strong. And see, there's Jessie right there, just coming straight through. That's pretty good.
I asked her if it was her or Audrey that went down, and she said it was Audrey. So unfortunately, we knew that who crashed now. So when I see Anthony this time, I'm going to tell him that Audrey went down. Want to again make sure that she's taken care of and okay.
Yeah. And I didn't even hear that she said Audrey went down. I just heard her say there was a crash. So I was kind of picking up my pace a little bit to get back there. But by the time I got back there, Audrey was back to the car on her way to the hospital to get x-rays.
In one of the rotations, I'm going to remind Jessie to eat if she hasn't, but she said she had something over her ears and never told me, but I think it's
Never heard
important.
you.
Never heard me. But I think, and here you see Sid's going to get some nutrition, but that's something that's very important, especially if you're newer to racing. It's very easy to, or sometimes if you're a veteran racer, it's easy to forget nutrition, drinking, eating, and you think you're feeling fine, you just keep going, and then all of a sudden at some point you're not fine. Or you may have been able to do a lot more effort if you had the proper nutrition. And proper nutrition for each person is going to be probably a little bit different, but still important to have some nutrition.
Yeah, before the race, after the race, during the race, leading up to the race, just all the time. It's better to be working. I mean, it's best to be working on your nutrition. Practice things on other rides. Typically don't change the routine on race day. But yeah, Jessie is she's gonna complete the race fine and everything, but she's gonna bonk pretty hard after the race. And I coach a number of people, and even through the years, for some reason, it's almost the younger people are, the harder it is to convince them to eat. And not to be ageist, but yeah, it happens. Like, I used to be the same way. I burn a lot of fuel, and I've bonked a number of times to where it's like feels like near death. And now I try to take something, every 30 minutes or so. On any type of hard ride, I try to go every 30 minutes or so, and a bottle of water an hour. I know everybody's on the 60 to 90 grams of carbs kind of kick, and sometimes now they're up to 120 grams of carbs per hour. But that's going to vary a little bit, and it's going to depend on what your stomach can tolerate also, and what type of nutrition you take as well.
For me, I found that it's hard for me to digest a goo or something that's a little bit thicker. So I really love Hammer Nutrition. I put it in a little flask with some water. It carries 2 to 3 servings, and that's really easy for me to take. In my water bottles, I usually just have water. Sometimes I'll do an element, but I have a really hard time having calories or something, especially if it's warmer for whatever reason. That's really just hard for me to take. So sometimes I know the calories can be beneficial, but just the taste on the bike is hard for me to get the fluids in. But everyone's different. So I know Anthony does usually calories in his bottle for a little bit longer. He likes the SIS. So I think it's experimenting sometimes with what you're able to do. I like the chews, and sometimes those are okay, but sometimes if you're really doing a hard effort, it's hard to, for me at least, to chew them and swallow them. So the diluted kind of gel with the water is easy for me to take.
Yeah, and I like to take like anything that I'm going to take solid, even if it's like gummy bears or a bar or anything. I like to take that very early. Typically, really solid food like bars and stuff, I'll take either before the ride or if we come to a stop. Gummy bears or anything like that, I'll take kind of early. And then I take SIS gels like every 30 minutes or whatever. That just kind of works better for me. And while I'm riding, I don't like to chew because it affects my breathing a little bit, especially in the winter when you have a snotty nose. You already have a little snot in your nose that's affecting your breathing through your nose, and then to be chewing on something affects your breathing a little bit more. So for me, any solid food is going to be like early at the beginning of the ride, and then I take gels through the rest with also calories or electrolytes in the water bottles.
And I noticed both of these riders have some bare legs. It was very chilly out, and I had a full, really warm bibs on that were full length and a jacket. So I didn't even wear my speed suit out here because I wanted to be warm and comfortable. Jessie borrowed my leg warmers because she didn't have any. Usually she's out here with nothing on, but she decided it was even a little cold for her today. So
yeah, I saw 43 earlier in the race when you guys are racing. It still says it's only 48 right now. So yeah, definitely a cold day. I think it was a blessing that there wasn't much wind and the sun was trying to poke out a little bit. So yeah. I think this is about where I passed you guys here, coming through these little S's before you guys hit the big climb again.
And another thing just about bonking, it is pretty scary. So I've witnessed you bonk a couple times, and I know one time you had a little AFib episode on top of it. Hard to know which came first, but it's really alarming. I've never felt it myself. There's a few times I've felt kind of down or shaky after a ride, but I've never fully bonked because unfortunately sometimes I prioritize eating and drinking over the racing and riding. But it's scary to witness it, and I think definitely we could have done a better job as kind of the veterans of helping Jessie to not have the bonking experience that she did after. So something I think moving forward, just doing a better job of, helping our teammates and having some nutrition, reminding them to eat after a race. You're excited, the adrenaline still is going. We all have a story.
Yeah, that's me passing you guys right there, and that's when you tell me that Audrey crashed. But yeah, I agree with you. I think also, we should have a recovery drink or something waiting at the end of, especially at the end of road races. Sometimes you don't need it at the end of a crit because they're such shorter, and with the draft you don't usually use such what am I trying to say? Sustained.
Effort, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a sustained effort. It's kind of punchy off and on. When you're on an hour and a half road race, basically, yeah, you're gonna be, for the most part, you're gonna be sweet spot to VO2 for that entire hour and a half, other than some coasting and some good drafts. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's still a long time, and I think just topping off with a recovery drink right when you finish is probably wouldn't hurt.
And it's really about the effort. So sometimes we'll do a 2-hour zone 1-2 ride in the morning. Sometimes we'll even do it fasted, and that's okay. But when you're doing the kind of effort that is anything above zone 2, really, it's very important to have nutrients in. And Anthony, you could probably explain a little bit better what the body's doing and what it's absorbing a little bit better than I can. But our body needs to be fueled appropriately and not have it use things that we don't want it to use. So go ahead, take it away before I put my foot in my mouth.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm not going to try to become a sports scientist all of a sudden. I do coach. I'm not a sports scientist. I'm not a nutritionist. But yeah, studies pretty much show that your body's always better fueled opposed to not being fueled. Even if you try fasted rides and stuff like that, it doesn't really come in effect for us because we don't race long enough usually. Also, people, there's a misconception of your body kind of like burning fat, but you really burn fat at lower intensities because it takes oxygen to process fat as a fuel. It takes a lot of oxygen, and when you're at a little bit more oxygen depleted state, it's really hard to use fat as a fuel. That's why our body pretty much always looks for carbohydrates for the most part, because we're at higher intensities. So if you're going to do like a really long ride, like centuries and things like that, yeah, it may be better to do some fasted rides in practice to get your body to, be able to oxidize and process fat a little bit better. But for the most part, almost all of our races are less than 2 hours, and because they're less than 2 hours, they're at a higher intensity, and you're going to be using carbohydrates and sugars, more than anything. So when you get to a bonk state also, and you're still putting in decent efforts, you start to cannibalize protein as well. So a lot of things kind of start to domino at that point, and especially if it's coupled with dehydration also. So like I said, I'm not a sports scientist. I'm not a nutritionist. I am just cycling coach, and I mainly specialize on cycling fitness. But and I shouldn't say specialize, but that's my concentration. That's my discipline. And I kind of stick to those things. But yeah, it's just gotta stay fueled. Gotta stay fueled. It doesn't hurt to be overfueled. It does hurt to be underfueled though. And if a lot of people, like I know a lot of people are triathletes now, and that's one of the best places to tinker with your fueling and get it right, just because the consequence is so great when you get it wrong.
And here I see Jessie gets a little impatient, and I can tell she's been recovered in the draft, and so I ask her if she wants to bridge, and so I say, hey, let me help you. So I'm thinking if I can try to help her bridge, at some point you just got to make a move. So she obviously caught us, so she is strong, and she wanted to try her move. So unfortunately, I make a not the best decision here up the hill. I should have probably sat in, but I'm going to do an effort and try to help her as much as I can to give her a chance to break. And I just blow up so fast because I should not have done it on this hill. I should have maybe waited till what, the rollers or downhills that played to my strengths, because man, that was too hard of an effort. I couldn't sustain it. She's able to get off nicely though, but then Sid is going to put in a hard effort here, and I'm pretty much blown up. So I try to hold her wheel here, but it was just really difficult. So it's easy to look back and try to think of some things differently, but at the same time, this is Jesse's first road race, and sometimes you just got to try some things and see what works.
Well, I think this is part of, something I do teach. And this is why, to me, it's important for people to understand their zones. A lot of people don't understand their zones. What's their threshold, their VO2, their anaerobic zones, all those kind of things. Because I know a lot of people say use RPE, but like you said, you thought you were feeling good. You thought you can put in that effort. Well, when you look at the facts and you're at 400 watts when you started that, and then you're in the high 300s, well, realistically, you can only hold that for about a minute. That's just what your power profile is. You can only hold it for about a minute. So, yeah, you're way into anaerobic, your anaerobic system at that time, and it's going to be short. It's going to be 30 seconds to a minute, maybe 2 minutes at max. So, yeah, you definitely have to understand your zones, know your zones. And I think if you would have just pedaled at about 250, which is a VO2 effort for you, something that you can hold for 4 to 8 minutes, that would have helped Jesse a lot better. And you would have maybe gotten, you would have taxed these two women as well, and Jesse would have maybe had a better chance of staying away. But that short burst that you did, yeah, it's almost a waste, because there's no way you can sustain that.
And I was suffering here, and I went back and forth with being delusional, thinking maybe I can get back on, and the three of us can still work together. But 2 versus 1 working together after I just blew myself up wasn't happening. But I didn't give up. I was determined to still try to give as hard of an effort as I could, and thought that if they blow up at some point, I may still have a chance to get them by the end of the race. So I still am going to give a hard effort, and I can see them up the road. I can see Jesse up the road, and then there's some men that we're about to catch and pass here. So it always feels good when you're passing people versus when everyone's catching and passing you. But I'm in the hurt locker right here, so it was hard to sustain a threshold effort, but I did have some pretty good power numbers, and I would say overall for the race, I felt really good. I didn't ride the day before just because I worked, and then we took the 4-hour drive up to Santa Maria and stayed in a really nice little inn. I also had higher power numbers for 20 minutes than I did on my FTP test a few weeks ago. Granted, the FTP test was on Zwift, which I think the numbers have to be wrong with the effort perceived on Zwift.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. I don't think I've seen you guys catch so many guys as you did this race. You know, in other races, I have never seen you guys pass so many of the other fields. And I think that field started 10 or 15 minutes in front of you guys. So I think it was the men's 4-5 or the open 4-5 and the collegiate C and D maybe. But yeah, they started 10 to 15 minutes earlier, and you guys ran down a pretty decent number of them. Yeah, and I think Audrey's done this race a few times now, and I think like Ellen's finishing time, I think, was faster than those previous races. So I think this race was a little faster than the previous years for this category. Yeah, so there's one of the guys there from the 4-5 and collegiate C and D. Another one here in front. So definitely Ellen's still putting in a good effort. Like we said, this is all threshold and VO2 efforts. And, you know, that was the type of effort she should have put in when she was trying to launch Jessie. Because just going straight to 400 watts, even though it doesn't seem like that much, you can see her max power on this day was 760. But that's like a true anaerobic effort up there at that 760. I think her max sprint is just under 900 watts. So, yeah, I mean,
I can tell you that I thoroughly regretted it and knew it was the wrong choice.
yeah.
About a minute later, but it is what it is, and I'm happy to be trying some things. I think.
Yeah. No, you have to try.
And I think for Jessie, she has to know what she can and can't do also. And I think she found out that being in the wind by herself is very difficult. So, and the effort that she had done to catch us really taxed her. And then, you know, being improperly nutritioned or fueled. Don't think nutritioned is a word, but they're going to swallow her up with, and maybe swallow her up is a bad word, but with a couple miles to go, she was able to work with them.
Yeah, so basically once they caught Jessie, she worked with them for a little bit, recomposed herself, and then she attacked again and, you know, dropped the other two girls and kind of soloed to a 5th place finish.
I was going to be extremely disappointed if both of those riders beat Jessie and myself after trying the tactics. So I was very happy that Jessie was able to come across the line 5th, and I can see them just getting over the hill, and I think, okay, if I can just do a hard effort and maybe maintain speed, you know, I might be able to go faster downhill. So I am just going to give a few hard efforts, sometimes cresting these hills, but it is not enough. And then at a certain point, I realized that I'm in 8th position, pending no catastrophic event.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because, like, you know, 3 is always faster than 1 for the most part. If they're working together, 3 is faster than 1. And I think after that, like, they hit this downhill before you did, and I think they're gone now. And it's funny because just you were probably 20 seconds back, and once they hit the downhill, look, they're just not even in sight anymore. So I think that's the last time you see them, basically. And it's kind of solo days from here on.
I'm pretty sure I can still see them because I don't even think that they've caught Jessie yet. But I was able to see the 2 of them and the one in the distance, but I could see that the gap in between them was getting shorter by the minute. And I'm sure they having a carrot out in front of you is always something that keeps most people engaged. If you feel like there's something I can chase, something I can catch, is some good motivation versus just suffering completely by yourself.
Yeah, I think they're gone. Maybe you could see them in real life on the day, but I think they're gone.
I could for sure.
Yeah, because this is like, it's pretty fast, and it's definitely hard to catch people on a fast surface. You'd have to be going so many more miles per hour faster than them to catch them. Even if you're going like slightly faster than them now, it would take a long distance to catch them. And I don't know how far it is, but you only have about 25 minutes left or so.
And I want to say at this point they were maybe a minute in front of me.
Yeah, you have about 22 minutes left. So yeah, it's probably, I don't know, a good 5 miles is that? No, probably almost 7 miles. Yeah, I do see someone up there though. Someone just, well, I don't know, that might be a street light. I can't tell by the video. It looks like there is a figure up there though, off the road.
Just trust me, I could see him until probably the last corner or so.
Like you're on the front straight with them, or I'm going back?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe you do catch them, not catch them, but can see them again.
I still had some ideas of grandeur in maybe they'll bonk out and I'll be able to put in this hard effort and catch, but I think it was borderline delusional.
Well, no, it's just, there's 3 of them, so they get to rest every couple, every once in a while. They get a rest, they get a draft, they get a rest, and you got to put in effort the whole way, which is a good effort. I mean, I think you did I don't know, your 20-minute power was 2:17 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's a pretty good effort, especially late like this when you're racing for an hour and a half. So it's not like you had a real break anywhere. What was your average? 200, 2 something?
I think my average was about 190 and my normalized for the race was 212, so not a very big gap. So even in the peloton in the beginning, when it felt pretty easy, it wasn't enough to bring the average down significantly. So that's really too close. You want your average power down in a race a little bit.
Well, not
less.
when it's sustained like this. It's going to be closer because the draft effect isn't as strong. Crits are different than a road race. So in a crit, yeah, you want your normalized power and your average power to be different because that shows your efficiency. But in a race like this, where you're doing a lot of your own efforts and there's a lot of hills, your normalized and your average power are going to be closer together.
Well, that's what I was saying is I would rather be with a peloton being efficient much longer.
Right.
But that was not the case today. And I was remembering how nice it felt to have a group of 4 and having some time to draft. And I was really regretting not having some people to work with right now. And then once they caught Jesse, the 3 of them were just getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, still a pretty good effort. Like I said, you're still doing pretty much threshold, sweet spot to VO2.
Yeah, I felt pretty good today, and it's sometimes unknown what goes into you feeling good on a day and being able to put in the effort, and then some days where you just don't feel good. So the training is always an experiment a little bit. To when you get to race day, you can't really predict exactly how you're going to feel. And I would say that it feels nice to have a day like today where you're able to do the hard effort and it feels pretty good. I didn't feel too taxed after. According to Training Peaks, I was a little bit too rested. My form was pretty high coming into the race.
Yeah, this is the only, not the only, but this is probably the part of the course I would have enjoyed the most. You've been on this downhill for this descent for a very long time. It looks like almost this entire back road here, this entire straight, is pretty much downhill with a couple little kickers.
And you can see the road is a little bit beat up, but it was nothing too dangerous, nothing real significant. But there were some patches that were a little bit beat up, as you can see.
It definitely looks like a good descent, though. Good, fun, long descent.
It was nice. Very fun course. So I think, even though it's quite a distance, I would definitely like to come back out and do this race again.
Yeah, maybe we'll bring the team up next year for team camp up there. Come stay a little longer, and then do the race on Saturday.
That would be fun.
Yeah, we ended up staying at the Winestone Inn over in what is that, Orchid? Maybe Orchid or something like that. The Winestone Inn. Bunch of little bars and breweries, in the area. Everything's kind of like in walking distance, other than it was freezing. It's probably like 30-something degrees when we were out there, but yeah, it's a nice little, could be a little fun time. Nice roads to ride. Get some good training in with the team and just some bonding.
So I think we've pretty much said what we can say about the race. So I think the four girls that were in the breakaway, that broke up, and from my understanding, Molly came across with a pretty good lead. Bailey, the Go Fast rider, was second, and then maybe a little bit gap. Kaya, I'm not real familiar with that rider, but she took third, and April came in fourth, and then Jessie came through by herself in fifth, and Holly and Sid were next, and then I came across in eighth by myself, and I think people just started to trickle in after that. So, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you at the Major Motion Crit. I think that's the next race. So thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Okay, because I wonder.
It was 2 and not.